How's it going, everybody? I'm Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel. So let's talk about a classic Capcom game with probably one of the most stylish and badass video game characters of all time. Let's talk about Devil May Cry. So no crazy introductions here, let's just dive right into this. Or better yet, let's rock, baby. Devil May Cry is the first in Capcom's ongoing action series originally released on the PlayStation 2 back in 2001. Before becoming the series as we know it today, Devil May Cry was originally going to be the next entry of Resident Evil. This would have been radically different for the series at the time, especially because Resident Evil is slow-paced while Devil May Cry is a lot faster. Eventually, this changed and Capcom went in a different direction for Resident Evil 4. But instead of abandoning the idea they had, Devil May Cry became its own thing. And luckily, the reception from everyone was very good. Anyway, the story of Devil May Cry follows a demon hunter named Dante, the son of the legendary Dark Knight called Sparta. Dante's father saved the human race from evil over 2 millennia beforehand and vanished over time. In the present, Dante runs a business called Devil May Cry, where he hunts demons for money, but only if the client knows a special password. One night, a mysterious young woman named Trish shows up to his place and violently attacks him, only to be subdued shortly afterwards. After the scuffle, Trish reveals that the Lord of the Underworld, Mundus, is planning an invasion of Earth by opening up the gates of Hell on Mallet Island. Mundus is a powerful demon who was defeated by Dante's father years earlier, but has returned to cause all types of havoc on Earth. Dante travels to Mallet Island with Trish to investigate and hopefully defeat Mundus once and for all. The story is very shallow, but it's original and definitely got a lot of people's attention with the game's heavy emphasis on action. According to Capcom, the plot was inspired by the Italian poem The Divine Comedy, where everything takes place within a world full of demons. Pretty wild, right? But is Devil May Cry as stylish and cool as you might remember, or is it a relic of a time that's long past?
Again I must face a Sparta. Strange fate, isn't it?
Strange and ironic that it will end the same way.
So let's be honest here, the story of Devil May Cry really isn't all that great. It has a lot of cheesiness that you saw in the late 90s to early 2000s. There's a lot of very shallow plot points that hardly go anywhere, and the way that both Dante and Trish act are very typical of video game characters, quote unquote, of that time frame. I mean, it is still very much an original idea that really is an offshoot of Resident Evil that has a very different flavor to it. Resident Evil was all about survival, and you were kind of helpless in the face of all these demons and monsters and stuff, but in Devil May Cry, you're a lot more powerful, or at least Dante is and Trish is. They're much more powerful, they do a whole lot of different things, and they're just not so helpless compared to someone like Jill or Chris Redfield. And like I mentioned before, because this game is the first in the franchise, there's a couple different things that do get set up for future entries of the series, but at least in this game, or at least in the context of Devil May Cry 1, they don't really go anywhere. Specifically the stuff going on with Dante's brother Virgil, which again is a huge part of some of the future games, but he's just kind of here. He's not even really mentioned in that type of way, at least what Virgil becomes later on. He's just known as like this Dark Knight that Dante fights a few times throughout the entirety of the story. As far as other stuff is concerned, with Sparta and setting up the lore of just what Devil May Cry is, it's just so contained, or at least, so limited within the confines of this game. Anyway, let's get into the stuff that we really want to talk about, and that's gameplay, because Devil May Cry was really different and really revolutionary, quote unquote, for its time. Especially with Capcom coming off Resident Evil 1 through 3 on the PlayStation, Devil May Cry really mixed things up, and it did so for the better. Devil May Cry was definitely not what people expected from Capcom back in the day, and that's understandable. A lot of the DNA from earlier Resident Evil titles is still here, including the fixed camera angles and overall control scheme. The movement and combat in Devil May Cry lets you feel more powerful and agile. That's something you just did not get within Resident Evil. Dante can attack enemies with his sword and other weapons, including the ebony and ivory pistols and various firearms that you gather throughout the game. But it's not good enough to just finish off demons. You have to defeat them with style. Chaining together attacks and constantly moving around between enemies will display a rating at the top of the screen. This rewards you with orbs to spend on upgrades and items at the end of each stage or via the statues that you find. You'll have to keep up your combos and avoid getting hit to get those high ratings. You'll come face to face with grotesque demons, savage beasts, and lurking monsters that make the zombies of Resident Evil look like child's play. But the best part? You're not helpless against them. Not only are Dante's attacks very strong, but you can also use the Devil Trigger. This allows Dante to change into his demonic form and deal extra damage, while also healing himself and moving around faster. The form that you take on will change depending on the main weapon that you have equipped. Between the Alistair sword or the fire gauntlets that you find, Dante could change into an electric-based or fire-based form while in Devil Trigger. These can look very cool and could definitely change up the flow of combat in your favor. You could stay in Devil Trigger form as long as you have enough meters saved up. Your Devil gauge can refill by attacking enemies or using an item to replenish it. But don't get it twisted, however. The demons you face are no pushover. Many of them are tough and will require some finesse in order to bring them down. With a little careful planning and some quick reflexes, however, you could stylishly take out everything in Dante's path and make every single one of those devils cry like babies.
You're right. I'm his son, Dante. Sweet dreams.
Now overall, the missions in Devil May Cry aren't really that difficult. Some of them can be run through very quickly, especially if you know exactly where to go and what to do. They're really not that bad. But the combat itself, the actual meat of the gameplay, I feel is also very well designed. Again, it was so different than what you got from Resident Evil back in the day. Things are a lot more faster, a lot more free-flowing, compared to like the really stifled nature and almost the tank-like controls of the Resident Evil series. Devil May Cry really went for a different flavor here. And I think it's just very cool overall. You get all these different types of moves and attacks you get to do in order to not only take out the demons, but do it in such a stylish fashion. It just feels very good to control and very good to do all these different moves. And eventually, Dante becomes a real powerhouse and allows you to do all sorts of crazy things. Now, one thing I will say that could get very frustrating towards the middle and later half of the game is the boss fights. I feel like just as you go through most of the game and you get into the later missions, the boss fights and some of the battles against larger groups of enemies tend to get very cheap. And the reason why is because sometimes these enemies are just doing ridiculous damage to you, even though the fights themselves and their patterns and such aren't really that difficult. All of a sudden you'll just lose a huge chunk of your health from a little stupid attack, and it forces you to rethink what you're supposed to do or redo the entire fight, and that could get very frustrating. Okay, now that we got through all that stuff, let's talk about some of this extra content in DMC, because there is stuff here, but there's a couple things that I feel like could have been a little bit better. Devil May Cry has some goodies you can unlock after finishing the game a few times. Luckily, it's not long enough to get through. It only lasts about 4 to 5 hours in total. In my own game, however, it took me about 3 hours to reach the end, so everyone's playtime will vary. When you finish the game on normal, you unlock hard mode. This mixes up the enemies in some areas and makes every demon stronger, but you also get to carry over any moves and weapons that you unlocked in your first playthrough, which is pretty neat. Beat the game on hard mode and you unlock the legendary Dark Knight mode, which lets you play as a reskinned Dante dressed as his father Sparta. It's basically a purple-coated version of Dante with a few extra weapons. Once again, beat this mode and then you unlock Dante Must Die mode, which is a hard as hell version of this game. Seeing the pattern here yet? It definitely gets repetitive overall. There's other stuff for you to unlock in here, such as a developer photo, as well as the secret mission rooms that are hidden within each stage. But to be totally honest with you, I don't think any of this is worth the effort. You have to get an S rank at the end of every stage in order to unlock the developer photo, which can feel impossible at times. The secret rooms that you find have these annoying stipulations for completing them, which could get very frustrating. No matter how good you are at the game, these missions will make you want to throw your controller. Honestly, I wish that there was more bonus content in the same way that the Resident Evil games had, like extra modes that were different and other characters that you got to play with. Unlocking Sparta is fine, but he's no different than Dante and doesn't really offer anything new to the game. Anyone who's a real masochist can try to get through Dante Must Die mode, but it's ridiculously hard and definitely not worth the headache for some people. You unlock Super Dante mode as an unlockable for completing it, which gives you unlimited Devil Trigger, but by then, you're pretty much done with the game. Honestly, you're not missing anything if you decide to skip it. It might be hard to admit, but Devil May Cry is very slim with its extra content.
My mother risked her life for me, and now you too. I should have saved you. I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
I should mention that there is an easy mode difficulty setting you can unlock if you get a game over within the first few missions of the game. The only thing about it is that even if you beat easy mode, you're not going to be able to unlock any of the hard or Dante Must Die modes, which is unfortunate because, again, you would have to start a whole brand new game on normal in order to get that other stuff. Even with that, however, I think it's very unfortunate with the type of extra content we got in this game. It's just so disappointing to me, especially in comparison to what you got in Resident Evil. You got all those extra modes, those extra characters, extra scenarios and stuff, and with Devil May Cry, it feels like Capcom kind of forgot all that stuff. It just seems like such a missed opportunity to me not to be able to play as Trish as an unlockable character since she's such a big part of this story. I know in other games later on she was able to become playable, but even so with here, it just feels like they just forgot to add her as a playable character. It would have been very cool. The other thing too is that the extra difficulty settings you unlock, like Dante Must Die mode and even hard mode, tend to be more cheap than they are challenging, especially in moments when you're getting hit by little minuscule attacks and all of a sudden your entire health bar is pretty much gone. That type of stuff is not so much challenging to me as much as it is very cheap, or at least artificial difficulty that's being added into the game. That type of stuff is not really as fun to me. So after everything that I've said, can I recommend that you guys check out Devil May Cry? Even with the few little aspects that I feel like haven't really aged all too well and can be very frustrating, I still feel like everybody should play this game at least once. The character of Dante is very cool and interesting and unique and has become iconic in his own right, and the gameplay is still fun in my opinion. The idea of just fighting demons and doing it in such a stylish fashion that just looks very cool overall and fast-paced, I think it still has an appeal to it even after all these years. If you're someone looking for a great action game that's classic and inspired many other action games that came in the years afterwards, you should definitely check out Devil May Cry if you haven't already.
The sky, it's so clear, so blue.
The sky is fair. It'll always be above everyone's head, no different.
Like the sky, I feel like my heart is becoming clear.
And there you go, everyone. Those are my thoughts and opinions about Devil May Cry, the original Devil May Cry. I still think it's a classic. It still has some good elements to it. If you never really played this game, just, pop it in one day. Check out the Devil May Cry HD collection. You can get it on PS4 or on Nintendo Switch now. You could even just pick up this game on Nintendo Switch, which is what I did. And it's still fun. It's still interesting. It's still very cool. However, because it's part of that collection, I am not looking forward to the next one that I'm going to dive into very soon. Oh my god, just the thought of it is just going to be so bad. Oh my god. I was telling my Discord about it sometime, and it was just, it's gonna be crazy, man. But as always, those are just my opinions about Devil May Cry. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comment section. Tell me, are you a fan of DMC? Do you like this game or any of the other games that came afterwards? What are some of your favorite characters from the Devil May Cry series? Put all that stuff down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Go ahead and click the boxes on the side to see more videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to go visit my Patreon page for exclusive gaming content that I know you'll really love. Hope you have a chill day. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.